The sun hung low over the vast expanse of sand, casting long shadows over the ruins of an ancient temple. Dr. Amina El-Sayed wiped her brow, her weathered hands clutching the fragile tablet she had unearthed. She had spent years in this remote part of the Sahara, following cryptic hieroglyphic texts hinting at a long-lost site. This discovery, if authentic, would surpass all her previous finds. The tablet bore an intricate engraving of scarab beetles encircling a solar disk. The hieroglyphs spoke of eternal watchers and a divine mechanism, phrases that puzzled her. The temple walls around her were covered with similar depictions, scarabs marching in endless procession, their wings iridescent even in the faded paint of the carvings. Amina's assistant, Tariq, approached, holding a small object wrapped in cloth. "Dr. El-Sayed, you need to see this." She carefully unwrapped the bundle to reveal a perfectly preserved scarab beetle encased in what appeared to be a crystalline shell. Its surface shimmered unnaturally in the fading sunlight. The artifact felt oddly warm to the touch, and its tiny, intricate carvings resembled a circuit board more than traditional Egyptian craftsmanship. "This isn't just a beetle," Amina whispered, her voice trembling. "This is something else entirely." That evening, as the desert cooled, Amina and Tariq set up their portable analysis equipment. A microscope revealed the scarab's shell wasn't organic. It was composed of a material she couldn't identify, its surface etched with patterns far too precise to be human-made by ancient standards. When they scanned it with a portable X-ray device, the results showed an internal structure that resembled modern circuitry. "This can't be real," Tariq muttered, shaking his head. "It's like it's alive, but not alive." Amina leaned closer to the screen, her mind racing. She recalled ancient Egyptian texts that described the scarab as a symbol of rebirth and the sun's movement across the sky. But those texts also hinted at something more, references to the eyes of Ra that watched over humanity. What if the scarab's significance wasn't symbolic? She mused. What if they were literal eyes? Tariq frowned. "You mean like surveillance?" "Exactly. But not by the Egyptians." Her voice lowered, as if the desert itself might be listening. What if these scarabs were left here by something else? The scarab began to hum later that night. Amina and Tariq, startled from their work, watched as the tiny object vibrated on the table. A faint glow emanated from its underbelly, pulsating like a heartbeat. Suddenly, it projected a thin beam of light onto the tent wall, forming a rotating three-dimensional image. The image depicted Earth, but not as Amina knew it. The continents were unfamiliar, more primitive, surrounded by sprawling oceans. As the image zoomed in, they saw figures, humans or something like them, constructing monumental structures with assistance from strange, hovering machines. "This is ancient Earth," Tariq said, barely able to breathe. The projection shifted to show scarabs swarming over these early humans, some attaching themselves to their skin, others hovering like drones. The scarab's activities seemed methodical, as if recording or influencing the humans' behavior. A final image appeared, a massive scarab-shaped vessel descending from the sky, its body gleaming with an otherworldly light. Then, just as abruptly as it started, the projection ended, and the scarab lay still. Amina sat back, her mind reeling. "This isn't just a relic. It's a message. A record." Tariq's voice quivered. "But from who? And why are they still active?" The next morning, Amina insisted they venture deeper into the temple. With the scarab now safely stored in a reinforced case, they followed the carvings, which seemed to guide them. The hieroglyphs grew more complex, interspersed with diagrams of scarabs and abstract shapes that looked increasingly like star maps. At the heart of the temple, they found a chamber sealed by a massive stone door. The carvings on its surface depicted a scarab with outstretched wings, flanked by figures resembling both humans and otherworldly beings. "This must be it," Amina said, her voice tinged with awe. "The central mechanism." Tariq hesitated. "What if it's dangerous?" Amina shot him a determined look. "We've already crossed that line." Together, they pushed the door open, revealing a vast chamber filled with metallic scarabs suspended in midair. The room buzzed faintly, the sound of 1,000 tiny wings vibrating in unison. At the center of the chamber stood a pedestal, upon which rested a larger scarab, its size akin to a dinner plate, with veins of glowing light coursing through its shell. Amina approached cautiously, the smaller scarab from the previous night in hand. As she placed it near the larger one, the entire room came alive. The suspended scarabs began to move, forming intricate patterns in the air. The large scarab emitted a low-frequency hum, and another projection illuminated the chamber. This time, the image showed Earth in its current state, modern cities, airplanes, and satellites orbiting the planet. The perspective shifted to show the scarabs, dormant beneath the sands of Egypt, their surveillance ongoing. The projection then displayed a countdown, its numbers incomprehensible but unmistakably ominous. "What does it mean?" Tariq asked, his voice barely a whisper. Amina stared at the projection, her mind racing. "It's a failsafe. A countdown to something." The projection ended, and the scarabs returned to their dormant state. Amina turned to Tariq, her expression grim. "These aren't just surveillance drones. They're guardians, or maybe jailers. Whatever civilization left them here was monitoring us for a reason. Do you think they're still out there?" Tariq asked. Amina looked at the scarabs, their alien craftsmanship glinting in the dim light. "If they've been watching us all this time, I'd say they never left." That night, Amina couldn't sleep. The implications of their discovery weighed heavily on her. Were the scarabs monitoring humanity out of curiosity, or were they safeguarding something? And what would happen when the countdown reached 0? As she lay in her tent, staring at the stars, she noticed something unusual. A bright light streaked across the sky, stopping abruptly above the horizon. It hovered there, pulsing faintly. "Tariq," she whispered, shaking him awake.
"Look."
He groggily followed her gaze. The light began to move, descending slowly. It wasn't a shooting star, it was something else entirely. "We need to leave," Tariq said, panic rising in his voice. "No," Amina replied, her resolve hardening. "We need to find out what it is." The light landed in the distance, near the edge of the excavation site. Grabbing their equipment, Amina and Tariq approached cautiously. As they neared, they saw a craft, its surface smooth and reflective, blending seamlessly with the desert night. A figure emerged, humanoid in shape but undeniably alien. Its skin shimmered like the scarab's shells, and its eyes glowed faintly. It held a device that emitted a series of tones and symbols, which resolved into words in Amina's mind. "Custodians," the being said. "Your time approaches." Amina stepped forward, her fear tempered by curiosity. "What are you? Why are you watching us?" The being tilted its head. "We are the architects. The scarabs are our sentinels. Your species was seeded for potential. We observe, guide, and intervene if necessary." "What's the countdown for?" Tariq demanded. The being's glowing eyes flickered. "The threshold event. When your actions determine whether you ascend or are reset." Amina's heart raced. "Reset? You mean extinction?" "Correction," the being said. "Renewal. The choice is yours." Before they could ask more, the being and its craft vanished, leaving only the faint hum of the scarabs in the distance. Amina and Tariq returned to the temple, their discovery weighing heavily on them. The scarabs, the countdown, the architects, it all pointed to a stark reality. Humanity was being judged, and the clock was ticking. "What do we do now?" Tariq asked, his voice trembling. Amina looked at the scarabs, their alien light reflecting in her eyes. "We find a way to stop the countdown. Or we prove that humanity is worth saving." As the first rays of dawn broke over the desert, the scarabs stirred once more, their hum resonating with a newfound urgency. The days that followed were a whirlwind of activity. Amina and Tariq documented every detail of their discovery, transmitting data to trusted colleagues under strict secrecy. But as they delved deeper into the temple's mysteries, strange phenomena began to unfold. The scarabs that had been dormant for millennia began to move sporadically. Their wings, though delicate, emitted soft, harmonic tones that resonated through the chamber. The The tones seemed to follow a pattern, and Amina suspected they were transmitting a message or a warning. One evening, while analyzing the scarab's projection for the 10th time, Amina noticed something she had missed before. Embedded within the star maps was a sequence of symbols resembling ancient Egyptian hieroglyphs, but with a futuristic twist. These symbols, she said, pointing at the screen, they're coordinates. Tariq leaned in, his brow furrowing. Coordinates? To where? Amina's fingers danced over the keyboard, overlaying the coordinates onto a modern map of Earth. Her eyes widened as the location came into focus. It's pointing to the Nile Delta. The Nile? Tariq asked. What could be there? I don't know, Amina replied, grabbing her bag. But we're going to find out. Their journey to the Nile Delta was met with bureaucratic hurdles and an escalating sense of unease. Amina had arranged for a small excavation team under the guise of a routine archaeological dig. As they set up camp near the coordinates, local workers whispered rumors about the site being cursed. The location itself was unremarkable at first glance, an expanse of marshland dotted with reeds and ancient ruins. But as Amina's team began to dig, they uncovered something extraordinary. Beneath layers of silt and vegetation lay a circular structure, its surface smooth and metallic, much like the scarabs. The object spanned nearly 20 meters in diameter, with a faint glow emanating from its edges. At its center was an indentation shaped like the larger scarab they had found in the temple. It's a gateway, Amina murmured, her voice trembling with awe. Tariq looked skeptical. A gateway to what? Before she could answer, the scarab in her possession began to hum again. It hovered out of her hand and positioned itself within the indentation. The moment it clicked into place, the entire structure came alive. The metallic surface began to ripple like liquid, and a vortex of light erupted from the center. The air around them crackled with energy, and the surrounding reeds swayed violently despite the absence of wind. A series of holographic glyphs appeared above the structure, forming a pattern Amina recognized from the temple. It's activating. Tariq shouted over the noise. What do? We go through, Amina said, her eyes locked on the swirling vortex. Without hesitation, she stepped forward, her heart pounding in her chest. Tariq cursed under his breath but followed her. The sensation of passing through the gateway was like stepping into a dream. For a moment, Amina felt weightless, her surroundings a kaleidoscope of colors and light. Then, with a jarring thud, she found herself standing in a vast chamber unlike anything she had ever seen. The walls were composed of a strange, translucent material that pulsed with an inner light. Towering columns stretched into the distance, their surfaces covered in alien inscriptions. The air was thick with an almost electric charge, and the faint hum of machinery reverberated through the chamber. Tariq appeared beside her, looking disoriented. Where are we? Amina scanned the room, her eyes falling on a massive structure at its center. It resembled a throne, but its design was far from human. Sitting upon it was a being, its form both alien and majestic. Its shimmering, insectoid exoskeleton mirrored the scarabs, and its glowing eyes fixed on them with an intensity that made Amina's breath catch. The being spoke, its voice resonating in their minds. Welcome, custodians of Earth. Amina gathered her courage. Who are you? Why have you brought us here? The being stood, its movements fluid and precise. I am Khepri, architect of the Scarab Sentinels. For millennia, my kind has watched over your species, guiding and protecting when necessary. Protecting us from what? Tariq asked. Yourselves, Khepri replied. Your potential is vast, but so is your capacity for destruction. The Sentinels were designed to monitor your progress and intervene if your actions threaten the balance. Amina stepped forward. The countdown, what does it mean? What happens when it reaches 0? Khepri's gaze darkened. The threshold event. A point of no return, determined by your collective choices. If humanity proves incapable of preserving its world and advancing responsibly, the Scarabs will execute their secondary protocol. Which is? Tariq pressed. Khepri's voice was heavy with finality. Reset. The weight of the revelation hung between them. Amina's mind raced as she pieced together the implications. But we've made progress, she argued. Our world is flawed, yes, but we've achieved so much. Science, art, cooperation. Your achievements are noted, Khepri said. But so are your wars, your exploitation of resources, and your disregard for the interconnectedness of life. Then, why bring us here? Tariq demanded. Why not just reset us already? Because hope remains, Khepri said. The gateway was a test and you have passed. Your willingness to seek answers and confront the unknown marks you as potential catalysts for change. Amina exchanged a glance with Tariq. What can we do to stop the countdown? Khepri extended a limb, revealing a small, glowing device. This key will grant you access to the Sentinel network. Through it, you may influence the course of the countdown. But be warned, the burden of change lies with your people, not the Sentinels. With the device in hand, Amina and Tariq were guided back to the gateway. As they prepared to leave, Khepri's parting words echoed in their minds. Your choices will shape the future of your kind. Prove that you are worthy of the gift of life. They stepped through the vortex, emerging once again in the Nile Delta. The structure behind them shimmered briefly before sinking into the earth, leaving no trace of its existence. Back at their base, Amina and Tariq studied the device, which projected a complex network of glowing lines and nodes. Each node represented a critical aspect of human civilization, environment, governance, technology, and more. The countdown continued to tick, its numbers now visible on the device's interface. We have a chance, Amina said, determination lighting her face. A chance to rewrite the future. Tariq nodded, though his expression remained grim. Let's hope humanity is ready to listen. As they began their work, the scarabs across the desert stirred, their wings humming in unison, a chorus of watchers awaiting humanity's next move. The countdown continued, its steady rhythm a reminder that time was running out. In the days that followed, Amina and Tariq worked tirelessly to decipher the intricacies of the Sentinel network. The device was both a map and a tool, displaying global data in ways no human technology could replicate. It tracked environmental degradation, geopolitical instability, and even subtle fluctuations in human behavior, an omniscient system monitoring every facet of life on Earth. The countdown continued, its unrelenting numbers reminding them of the stakes. As they explored the device's capabilities, they realized it could send pulses to scarabs still buried across the globe, awakening them and directing their activity. But these weren't simple surveillance drones. The scarabs could subtly influence human behavior by emitting frequencies that affected emotions and decision-making. It's like they're tuning us, Tariq said one evening, staring at the glowing device. Pushing us toward better choices, or worse ones. That's why they've been dormant for so long, Amina replied. The architects wanted to see if we could evolve without interference. But now we're at a tipping point. The first test came sooner than expected. A massive wildfire raged in the Amazon, consuming vast swathes of forest at an alarming rate. While the world's governments argued over aid and logistics, Amina saw an opportunity to act. Using the device, she activated a cluster of scarabs buried in South America. The scarabs awoke with startling efficiency, flying toward the heart of the fire. Through the Sentinel network, Amina and Tariq watched as the scarabs worked in unison, emitting a strange, cooling mist that suppressed the flames. News of the miraculous containment spread rapidly, but no one could explain the phenomena. Some attributed it to divine intervention, others to a breakthrough in firefighting technology. Amina and Tariq stayed silent, knowing the truth was far more complex. That was just one crisis, Tariq said. What about the others? The wars? The famine? The climate disasters? Amina nodded, her expression resolute. We can't solve everything, but if we can tip the scales just enough, it might be enough to stop the countdown. As word of unexplained events spread, strange phenomena began occurring worldwide. In areas of high tension, such as conflict zones, locals reported seeing glowing scarabs hovering overhead. Witnesses described feeling an inexplicable calm, their anger and fear dissipating as if soothed by an invisible force. Tariq analyzed the data, his disbelief growing. It's like they're pacifying people. Look at this. Violent crime rates are dropping in every region where the scarabs are active. Amina looked at the numbers, a flicker of hope rising in her chest. If we can show the architects that we're capable of change, maybe we can stop the reset. But not everyone welcomed the scarabs. As their presence became more widespread, conspiracy theories erupted across social media. Some claimed the scarabs were alien invaders, bent on controlling humanity. Others believed they were government weapons. Protests broke out in major cities, with demonstrators destroying scarabs whenever they appeared. One night, as Amina and Tariq monitored the Sentinel network, a warning flashed across the device. A high-ranking government in a superpower nation had detected scarab activity and interpreted it as a threat. Satellite imagery showed military convoys mobilizing, heading toward known scarab burial sites. "They're going to attack," Tariq said, his voice laced with panic. "They think the scarabs are enemies." Amina's mind raced. If they destroy the scarabs, they'll trigger the architect's intervention.
We have to stop them.
Desperate, Amina used the device to amplify the scarab's influence. Across the nation, scarabs emitted frequencies that calmed tensions, subtly altering the thoughts of key decision-makers. The convoys stopped just short of the burial sites, their leaders suddenly hesitant to proceed. The world breathed a collective sigh of relief, but Amina knew it was a temporary reprieve. Humanity's fear of the unknown was as dangerous as the countdown itself. As the countdown ticked closer to zero, Amina and Tariq faced a devastating truth. They couldn't stop every disaster, nor could they control the actions of billions. Their work had sparked change, but would it be enough? The Sentinel network revealed a new crisis, a rogue asteroid hurtling toward Earth, large enough to cause catastrophic damage. It was a direct threat to humanity, one the architects had deliberately withheld from modern telescopes. "This is it," Amina said, her voice trembling. "The ultimate test." Using the device, she activated scarabs across the globe. The tiny drones converged in Earth's upper atmosphere, creating a vast, shimmering net. As the asteroid approached, the scarabs emitted a concentrated beam of energy, disintegrating the massive rock into harmless fragments. The world watched in awe, unaware of the scarab's role. News outlets called it a miracle, but Amina and Tariq knew better. "That has to count for something," Tariq said, hope flickering in his eyes. Amina wasn't so sure. The countdown hasn't stopped. It's still ticking. On the final day of the countdown, the skies darkened unnaturally. Across the globe, scarabs emerged from their burial sites, forming massive swarms that blotted out the sun. Panic spread as people realized the scarabs were no longer working discreetly. Amina and Tariq stood in the temple chamber, the Sentinel network device glowing brighter than ever. The countdown reached its final seconds, and then it stopped. The scarabs froze mid-flight, their wings suspended in perfect stillness. The air grew heavy, and a familiar voice echoed in Amina's mind. Humanity has chosen its path. Khepri's form materialized in the chamber, its glowing eyes scanning them. "The threshold has been reached. Your actions have delayed the reset. The Sentinels will remain active, but your people must continue to evolve." Tariq exhaled in relief. "So we passed?" Khepri's gaze lingered on them. "You have bought time. Whether you succeed in the long term remains to be seen." With that, the scarabs dissolved into shimmering particles, vanishing into the air. The Sentinel network went dark, leaving Amina and Tariq standing in silence. In the weeks that followed, the world adjusted to life without the scarabs. Their brief presence had left an indelible mark, sparking debates about humanity's place in the universe. For Amina and Tariq, the journey was far from over. As they packed their equipment, Amina looked toward the horizon. "The architects may be watching, but the responsibility is ours now. We have to prove we're worth saving." Tariq nodded, a determined smile crossing his face. "One step at a time." And as they left the ruins behind, the faint hum of unseen scarabs echoed in the distance, a reminder that humanity was never truly alone.